just scratching the surface, is that there may be at some schools an attrition rate of as great as 80 to 100% of all applicants who first check the box cannot complete it and therefore are not even considered. The school doesn't have to say no. The process says no. 3 other quick points. One, for anybody doing work with young people or experienced people trying to get into college who have a prior criminal history record, and there's a little push card over there. Available on our website is a guide that we wrote for attorneys in counseling people with criminal history records about going to college. It was initially written for attorneys, but it's a wonderful primer for anyone doing counseling or anyone who wants to go on to college. And it really gets into some of the nitty-gritty of how to chart the course of these applications. The second thing second of these supplemental points I want to make is that through our work with Education from the Inside Out Coalition, there are 2 policy initiatives. Again, as an advocate, it's important to take research and make it a tool for our advocacy. So where do we want to go with this? One is to reinstate Pell in New York TAP, but the other is to abolish, right? So you're all familiar with ban the box with regard to employment. We want to abolish the box with regard to the criminal history question, and we hope to come up with a model piece of legislation which we affectionately have termed for New York Vivian's Law. Finally, let me say that equal access to higher education, although a foreign idea in this country, in most countries, equal access to higher education is accepted as a fundamental human right. We know this because it is written right into the Universal Declaration of Human Rights more than 60 years ago. Higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. That needs to be our rallying call. Beyond civil rights, beyond basic justice, it is a fundamental human right. It's a fundamental human right because, as Frederick Douglass said, it makes one unfit to be a slave. It equips one to lead. It equips one to engage in civic responsibility, and it equips one to fully engage one's citizenship. And so, for schools like CUNY, which you are always so happy when we travel around the country to point to and say, they don't do it. And they're running fine, well-respected institutions. They don't do it. But I call upon CUNY and its brother and sister schools to embrace it more than because it's our mission. Our mission is to educate all of the citizens that we can, but to take it a step further and to give us the tool to defend and promote this right, and to do it because it is a fundamental human right, to embrace that idea. And this is all the more true if we value the gifts that they bring. Thanks. Yeah.
Wow, so I just went behind 3 college professors and a lawyer. No pressure, none at all. I feel completely cool, no sweat, I'm good. All right. Good morning, folks. How's everybody doing? Good. My name is Tebout. some of you weren't here when I was introduced. I'm the Director of Counseling and Mentoring at an organization called the College Initiative. I won't go into all the stuff that we do at CI, but I'll just give you the gist of it. Essentially what we do is we help people with criminal records get into college and complete their degrees. That's the simplest explanation. Rather than go through the steps of what exactly we do, I'd like to go through the processes as I see it. Essentially what we do is we change the expectation, largely based on the criminal justice system, of people of color and people who have come from non-traditional backgrounds about how realistic college is as an option, right? So a lot of the situations that prepare people for the criminal justice system, and I won't go through all of them, but a lot of those situations also give a message that you're not ready for college. In fact, you couldn't even finish high school. Most of these folks don't finish high school. They get GEDs, maybe because they're in prison. So the message is, you're not college material. We work on changing that. And a lot of that is simply saying, yeah, you're college material. In fact, you can go to college. And so then the question becomes, well, how do I do that? It looks so hard. There are 5 million different applications and things I have to fill out. And, and I have this criminal history. No one's going to take me with a criminal history. And we're simply saying, yeah, that's not true. That's not what's happening. In fact, it's really simple. And if you come in here with us for about 3 hours of your time, we'll help you navigate that. So the first thing we do is we change people's perception about their college readiness, okay? And this is a message it's a very simple message to get across most of the time. The second thing we do is we help people navigate the process of going to college and sort of sift through and realize how uncomplicated it is, and then do it. The third thing we do is we help folks navigate the barriers to college entrance, right? So some of those barriers, one of the most prevalent barriers that we see is folks who chose to try to get some higher education. I mean, there was a desire. They went to a trade school. They went to a proprietary school. Maybe they went to a private school. Maybe they went to a CUNY school. They didn't, for whatever reason, they didn't complete that, and they wind up owing some money. We help folks navigate that. If the criminal history question comes up, there are certain crimes which set off alarms in most schools. We help folks negotiate that. And the third thing we do is we provide accurate information to people about what college is, who can go to college, who succeeds in college, and how those things happen. So when we talk about gifts, one of the things that I've identified in all the work that I've done with folks is that most people who come to College Initiative or CCF or any of these organizations to help navigate the college process want to give. People want to give. I think a lot of what I've identified is the folks who say, well, I want to have something to offer, but I don't really know what I have to offer, and I don't think anybody wants it. All right? So this research that we're talking about today, I mean, a lot of this has sort of been explained, and you've seen some data to support it, but people do want to be taxpayers. They want to contribute to their families, and quite frankly, it's in the best interest of society to support people in doing that, right? I mean, so a large part of what it means to be a criminal is to try to live outside of the mainstream economy, to try to live outside of the social systems that have been set up, which don't feel inclusionary, right? And college is a way of shifting that. So policies that keep people from going to college are effectively keeping people from offering their gifts, their contribution. So I've been on several sides of this conversation. I started out as someone with a criminal record entering society 10 years ago. From that role, I moved into being a college student and being supported by the College Initiative, who with all my drive and determination, having a support system that was able to help me understand what I was doing and move more efficiently, saved me time, saved me energy, and saved me frustration, right? Now I'm on the other side where I'm helping people navigate the system. And what I see is that if you give people the opportunity to give, they will. And college is providing that opportunity for folks. And now as an educator, and I teach KSAT classes, and as an educator, when I present to someone the option of going to college, just with this teeny tiny opportunity, 4 or 5 people come to me, so how do I do that? And they really let people in college with a criminal record? Now, on the flip side of that, I have to negotiate with administrators of different programs all the time. There are all these policies. There are people who will tell me, oh, well, that person can't get into college with a criminal record. They can't get financial aid. It's not true. It's absolutely inaccurate. And once I educate the person on the receiving end of the application or the receiving end of the process, there's a shift. They go, oh, I didn't know that. Well, of course I'll stamp the piece of paper and move the person through. You know, the value of this research and this information, though, is that it validates that these systems are not things that can't be changed. A lot of them are it's just about people not knowing the right information. You know, I mean, so one of the ideas is, well, if we let criminals on campus, there'll be more crime. Well, they're not criminals. You're a criminal when you actively are committing crimes and participating in the criminal activity, right? So they're not criminals. They're people who have criminal records. So one of the things I wanted to point out is this sense of the indefinite debt to society, right? So when is enough enough? When do we identify that the person has paid their debt to society? What happens is you commit a crime. You pay your debt, you serve whatever sentence is issued to you. You do all your time, you fulfill all your role, and then people can subjectively just decide, no, you're not done yet. No, in fact, no, I'm sorry, you won't be done for the rest of your life. Or maybe it's 10 years, or maybe it's 12. Despite research, despite evidence, it's just however I happen to feel about you, and if there's no policy to stop me, I can discriminate against you. What I'm proposing, though, is we can look at, so there's three things we can look at, right? We can look at the value added by someone with a criminal history transforming their lives, right? The risk that any person or institution takes in accepting someone, right? And the evidence that there's value added and that there's risk, right? But all of the evidence that I've ever seen suggests that allowing someone to go to college not only increases their value, their ability to contribute, right? It reduces their risk. I mean, most of this is done with recidivism studies that show that there's a range of studies that have shown drastic reductions in recidivism for completing any level of higher education, but in particularly college degrees. And having a college degree can act as evidence of that rehabilitation or evidence of that ability to contribute and that reduction of risk. So any policy that stands in the way of someone being able to offer more to their families, being able to offer more to their communities, being able to pay taxes and contribute to the larger economy and grow capacity for their communities and their environment is detrimental to the health of all of us, and we should stand against it. In closing, what I'm going to say is my recommendation is that we have policies that educate folks on what the real value of higher education is. Not just for people in prison, because I mean, if I were just a tax-paying, conservative-thinking person, I would say, oh, wait, why am I paying for someone who committed a crime to get more education and get smarter and maybe commit a better crime, right? It's not a stretch in logic, right? Except it doesn't consider a whole bunch of other things like the impact, the value that's added to the community once that person is readmitted. And I think a lot of this is more about an education campaign that shows how the more positive, constructive, contributing citizens we have, the greater we are as an economy and as a society. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I want to thank everybody who's come before me for all of the great work you've done and continue to do. Thank you to the Prison and Reentry Institute for inviting me here today and to all of you for being here. So I just want to respond to some of the stuff that we've heard today in a pretty disorganized way, but I'm sure you can sort it out because you're all really smart people. The first thing I always respond when I hear Alan or Patricia or anybody from Center for Community Alternatives refer to my friend Darby Dickerson's paper. And so in case you didn't connect the dots, because there are some dots to be connected, I want to kind of reduce down the Texas code language to New York talk here. So when Darby said that we want to use these criminal background checks as a way to screen out the people we don't want in our institution, what she was really saying was we found a legitimate way to reduce the number of black people coming into our college. I just wanted to connect those dots for you. Okay. The other thing I wanted to say is that while there really is some evidence, and I believe it's true, and I do use this argument, that the recidivism argument as it pertains to people getting college degrees who already have criminal records and have been in prison is a good argument, and there is data out there to prove that people recidivate much less when they have a college degree. That argument does not cross over to understanding why there's a question on an application when people are free in the community, why they have to check a box on an application. In fact, if you were trying to keep campuses safer in the community, you would stop college sports, and you would not admit men, and you would stop all drinking on campuses. And then you would not have crime on campuses.
You and Darby might be friends.
Okay, then let me get to the other really serious stuff I wanted to say. So when Natalie began her remarks, she mentioned the John Jay, I think it's the motto, educating for justice, right? And I was like, oh, that's nice, that sounds nice. And then I really thought hard about it. I was like, yeah, it sounds nice, but what does that mean, right? And then I said, well, I'm not sure what that means, but I rather like a different term. And I think it's how I want to frame my remarks today. And let's think about this phrase, educating with justice. How's that? Sounds pretty good to me, right? Educating with justice. And I think to adopt that phrase, for me, we'd have to kind of undo a fundamental premise that many of us believe in our society. And for me, it's a false fundamental premise. And that premise is that there are polar opposites on which we have built an entire system of criminal justice. And those polar opposites are good and evil. And they just don't exist. There are no polar opposites. There is a mishmash of all this stuff. Some of it is good, some of it is bad. Most of it is a mixture of both. And we as human beings contain all of it in varying degrees at different points in our lives. And we function in different ways, and we do different things. And we make different decisions and laws based on polar opposites that don't exist. So how do we come up with a system that addresses the uncertainty of that reality? We don't know how to do that. We haven't figured out how to do that. But we have to change the conversation. We have to change the conversation from how do we create a system that keeps us perfectly safe, which is impossible, to how do we create a system that's just. And if we proceed with our work, no matter whether our work is about education or employment or policing or sentencing, if we frame all of our work in that context, we'll do a much better job. Now let's get to these reports that have been issued. The gifts report, which is, and Natalie's work building upon the studies that were done at the Center for Community Alternatives. I think more state-based reports need to happen. I think colleges aren't really aware what they're doing. I think that what happens is that somebody, you know, campus security or administrators think, well, this is a good thing. You know, parents send their kids to school. They want to know that we're paying attention to who's on campus, right? But thinking it through in this fashion or in a very organized way does not happen. And I think that the more we do this and the more colleges are informed about the process and how they might be impacting large numbers of people who might already be marginalized in other ways, I think we can make changes. So thank you for your work, and more of it should be done. I think the gifts report brings to bear a lot of questions. And when we talk about the idea of radical inclusion and what the gifts are that people bring to these campuses, and is this an opportunity to include them in our higher education systems in a more radical way, we have to ask the question, what does that look like? And what does that mean? And whose decision is that? And at what point do people choose to disclose? And does radical inclusion require that they disclose? And what happens when they disclose? And if they disclose, where is the safe space? Because in a society where we have developed the idea of these polar opposites of good and evil, I'm bad, you're good, or I'm good, you're bad. If you say, well, now we're going to open up our campus, and if you have a criminal record, you come into our classroom, you're free to disclose, there's always going to be the element of the good who decides, well, now I have to alienate. I now have to alienate you. And we heard that in the report, that there's both overt and covert alienation that's going to happen. So where are the safe spaces going to be? Because we can't guarantee that the classroom is going to become a safe space. So does radical inclusion mean radical inclusion at the expense of the personal, emotional, intellectual safety of the individual? Or do we create those safe spaces? Or does radical inclusion mean that disclosure doesn't necessarily have to happen? That people bring their gifts into spaces even without disclosure? That when I'm in a room, the gifts I bring to this room, this very minute, are the gifts I bring. I don't have to tell you anything else about myself. You don't have to know whether I have a criminal history or not. My gifts are my gifts, whether you know my background or not. But if indeed people choose to disclose, there should be safe spaces. And I think Ray was very eloquent in talking about the safety of places like College Initiative, CI. And I work at College and Community Fellowship, which is a safe space for women. And you can certainly learn more about the work that we do on our website. The bottom line is that if we take it upon ourselves that we care about education as a fundamental right for human beings, as a civil right for populations that have been certainly marginalized here in the United States, that we care about justice in the larger context of what justice is, and that we want to provide education for all with justice, and not educate for justice in the context of maybe educating so that we're all safe, which is what that sounds like, but educate with justice, as in educate with equality, with equity, with concern for all of humanity, then we will take action, right? We won't just learn this information and receive all of the news that came from this report. This is good news. The good news is that people are resilient. And not only are they bringing their gifts into our public institutions, our private institutions, into our educational spaces, but they're willing to work and to offer their expertise and to offer their time and their energy to make this a better society. Then let's take action. Let's harness the power, let's harness the energy. And to that point, the Education from the Inside Out Coalition is more than willing to take all of your energy and all of your enthusiasm and put it to work. And our community organizer, Yasmin Safti, is in the room, and she has a Take Action handout that she is willing to give to you. Stand up, Yas. And I hope she's been tweeting throughout this entire process. We are on a campaign to really educate with justice, and I hope that you will join us. This has been a marvelous event. All of the people that you've heard from today, all of the people who worked on this report have been our partners for years. We are partners with them. This is a movement. This is a movement we want you all to be part of. And we've been very happy to be part of this event. So thank you for bringing us here today.
The fact that we have policy and practices that deny people equal access to higher education in 2013, and that regardless of the faces that the people who are being denied or discouraged come with, because those faces could be first-generation college students, they could be immigrants, they could be veterans, they could be fill in the blank, we're still having a conversation about equal access